How quickly can Charles Huff turn those Southern Miss Golden Eagles around? It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So obviously a lot of excitement surrounding the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. Big first ball game, Mississippi State heading into Hattiesburg, 11 a.m. next Saturday morning at The Rock. I'm very excited about that game. I may have to temper my expectations a little bit, but what the heck? We're going to go all in on Southern Miss. We bring in Scott Watkins. He is on the belt beat heading into his fifth season covering the Southern Miss Golden Eagles for the Sun Herald. What has Charles Huff brought to Hattiesburg and the Southern Miss Golden Eagles? And what are the honest expectations? I mean, there's a radio station down there that thinks they can contend for the Sun Belt West, win 8-9. I'm not sure about 10 ball games, but is that a lot going from one win to contending for the Sun Belt West? And how good has the Sun Belt been to Southern Miss? They came in a pretty healthy baseball program, and they've obviously done well in that. Football has been a little bit of a struggle, and they've been up and down. Had a good season a couple of years ago in basketball. So we bring him on. He is on the belt beat for the Sun Herald. He is Scott Watkins, and he is Locked On Sunbelt. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. We continue with our feature, the Belt Beat. We have Scott Watkins from the Sun Herald. He is covering the Southern Miss Golden Eagles for his fourth year. Hold on, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. This would be year number 5 if we can do math. My understanding is that there would be no math. I brought that in on myself. Scott, thanks very much for hopping on. Let's talk about it. It has been quite the offseason for Southern Miss. Charles Huff has brought his quarterback. He's brought his corner. What has Charles Huff brought to Southern Miss that was sorely lacking during the Fighting Will Hall era?
Southern Miss or Hattiesburg? I can't tell on your rundown here.
Well, it says Hattiesburg, Southern Miss, same thing.
A little bit of hope, a little bit of depth, a little bit of talent, a real quarterback. That's a big one.
That is
Southern Miss hasn't had a real quarterback since Nick Mullins. I don't know. I wasn't here. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
But this is the first time in a long time. That's all I can say. A lot of coaching experience. What Southern Miss has had under Will Hall these last few years are, outside of Chip Long, coordinators that were fairly inexperienced, guys that just hadn't been in that role very long. The defensive coordinator last year, he had been a DC for 1 year before that, and that was at Eastern Illinois. So you're getting a lot more experience with this staff. You got Blake Anderson as your OC. Mm-hmm. That's huge. I mean, that's a guy who's been at Arkansas State, Utah State, and he's been at Southern Miss before all of that. And then you have Jason Seymour, who's got 8 years of defensive coordinator experience and 2 in this league. And so that is a huge difference. And you see that kind of showing up when the players talk. One of the more outspoken quotes, one of the better quotes, I guess, that we got this year was from Chris Jones, a linebacker, when he said that in March, he said that he was actually learning football for the first time, and he was really excited about that. And so I think that there's a lot that's changed at Southern Miss. It's much more disciplined. I mean, Charles Huff is a disciplinarian, outspokenly so. He was very upfront at every presser throughout the year that some guys just weren't going to fit the mold. Nutrition is something that gets a lot of conversation around here. That's different. There's much more investment in that. Just everything from top to bottom is different under this regime, and that's what you want when you just went 1-11.
So that's a good question. We didn't really bring that up at Sunbelt Media Days. That's my bad. So what are we doing with the offense? Are we bringing in the Marshall offense with Braylon Braxton, and Blake Anderson is tweaking what he does, or is Blake Anderson bringing his offense and it's tweaked the other way. How is that working out? Because, Braylon knows what he's doing with the offense, or is Blake Anderson bringing his offense? How's that working out?
So there's way too many pieces from way too many places coming together on this offense for really either one to enforce what they do. What Blake Anderson has talked about a couple times is that they're just trying to build it so that they can take whatever's there. I mean, they're not going to be run focused. They're not going to be pass focused. They're just going to take whatever's there. They are very deep at running back, very deep at wide receiver. They think they have a lot of skill guys that can move around and move the field. So they'll be very spread and they'll be very fast. And that's the one thing that you can count on, is that they will snap the ball quickly. A lot of that depends on the offensive line. That's one of the question marks as well. Depth up front. They've got 5 guys that I think are pretty good, but finding the 5 fit and finding 5 or 6 behind them that you're comfortable with rotating in, that's the big question. But yeah, I think you're just going to see what's more of a traditional fast-paced spread offense, some RPO work. Braylon Braxton, he did say that he's had to learn some new terminology under Blake Anderson, but he's simplified it a little bit, and he's been tracking well, and they've gotten along. I mean, they both speak very highly of each other, so I think that it's a good sign. Yeah.
Well, we're talking with Scott Watkins from the Sun Herald, covering the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, Lockdown Sunbelt, your teams every day on the Belt Beat. So it does sound almost as though Blake Anderson would go to Braylon Braxton and say, this is what I've got. We're going to work this in, but what are you comfortable at? What can you do well, what we have, and sort of let's kind of work on this offense together. That's kind of what it feels like you were alluding to.
Yeah, I do think it's more Anderson, but the way that he described it is that Anderson is providing the structure, but he is allowing Braxton to be him, to be the player that he is. He is not going to alter anything about his game.
Right.
He wants him to have the freedom. So what I'm going to be looking for on week 1 is not just the freedom that Braxton has after the snap, but also before the snap. I want to see how much, how often, if at all, he's going to check into something else, and just see how he is with that. But that's my big question on regarding Braxton and Anderson and their relationship.
Yeah, we don't want to put a round peg into a square hole type of deal, and that's the thing. Charles Huff knows what Braylon Braxton does well, so we want to be able to stress that this is not a new coach quarterback combo, and so they know what they do well, and so Blake Anderson has to figure out how that works in his offense. And that's the other thing, like you said, very rarely, does an OC come back to the Sun Belt, and Blake Anderson knows all about the Sun Belt.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of familiarity there for sure. So I think that makes the transition a lot easier.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a timeout. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Scott Watkins. He's on the Belt Beat, covering the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. We'll talk about what are legitimate expectations for Southern Miss, despite opening up the season with Mississippi State. Do they have a favorable schedule early on and can get off to a good start? We'll do that right after I tell you about Monarch Money and Open Phone. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes. See the clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. And Open Phone. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need Open Phone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Do you juggle 2 phones just to keep up business and personal phone calls separate? Open Phone solves that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more, who's handling this? And the AI agent handles the after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads, so I never miss a customer again. See why over 60,000 businesses trust Open Phone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnCollege. That's openphone.com/LockedOnCollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. Open Phone. No missed calls, no missed customers. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let's continue our conversation with the Sun Herald's Scott Watkins. He's on the Belt Beat, and we discuss what are legitimate expectations for Charles Huff in year 1 as the head coach of the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. Scott is Locked On Sunbelt. Yeah, we're talking with Scott Watkins, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day, covering the Southern Miss Golden Eagles going into his 5th season for the Sun Herald. All right, what are some honest expectations for Southern Miss here in 2025? I may have jumped the gun a little bit thinking that they are going to beat Mississippi State. I'm not very high on Mississippi State. This has got to be the biggest ball game between 2 teams that combined for a grand total of 3 wins. And I believe one of those wins was against an FCS team. So it's 2 wins against 2 FBS teams. What are legit expectations? Because I hear guys on the radio that are thinking 8-9 wins for Southern Miss, and obviously that would be enormous. And they're thinking they can compete in the Sun Belt West. What do you think are legit expectations for Southern Miss in year 1 under Charles Huff?
It is kind of wild to think about that you could talk about a Southern Miss team and say, yeah, this is at least a 6-win team. And that seems to be the consensus that I hear from a lot of people is a modest expectation, 6 wins. That would make a lot of people happy.
That's a bowl game. That's amazing.
Exactly.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Going from 1 win to 6 and we're going bowling? Yes.
Exactly, because this program has not won an FBS football game since 2023.
Right.
And it's a very long time. So I think that the expectations for what they have on this roster, at least at the top of it, they are tempered. I don't think people are kind of going overboard with it. I don't think we're talking West Division crown. Right. But I do think that modest and honest expectation, this team should play for a bowl game.
And here's the thing. Okay, so let's not go nuts with a win over Mississippi State, although I happen to think they may do that, and I'm going to take that 12.5 points and that plus 360 and see if we can make some money on that. But they have some winnable football games after that. They could get off to a tremendous start. Jackson State, they do get App State in there early on, but La Tech is in there, and then Jacksonville State before they get Georgia Southern. It is not out of the realm of possibility to be 4-1 come October, right? They get a week off in there before they play, about 10 days off before they play Georgia Southern. That's not out of the realm of possibility to be 4-1 early on in the season. Then expectations are going to go through the roof because it's not just Southern Miss fans, but all fans are nuts once you get off to that great start.
Yeah, I think that would be a dream for Southern Miss. You know, Marshall got off to a good start last year and then hit that very long skid right there in the middle before finishing very strong.
Right.
4-1 would be a dream. It gets tough down the stretch. You get, Louisiana, ULM. They're not a pushover under Brian Bisson.
No.
Arkansas State on the road, you got to deal with Jalen Rayner.
Right.
Texas State, I don't think I'm very high on Texas State this year. South Alabama, I think their quarterback is going to be a handful, and you get Troy at the end. But you get a lot of these in good moments. Like you said, Georgia Southern comes after a long break. Louisiana is after extended break, and so that's a positive. You get Texas State and Troy, 2 of the last 3 games at home, and so it sets up enough for for nobody to say, "Oh, the schedule just didn't treat us well this year."
Right. So let's so let's go back to that. What's the talk there? We got a couple of weeks. It is an 11 a.m. game, so it's going to be toasty. Start hydrating now there, Watkins. All right. Mississippi State against Southern Miss. It is not just another ball game because it is the SEC coming to Hattiesburg. That is a big difference. If this was Southern Miss going to Starkville, it'd just be another football game to me. It is the SEC coming into Hattiesburg. What's been the talk? Heading into it, we got less than 2 weeks now.
Yeah, a bit north of Hattiesburg, the conversation is, we have to beat Southern Miss by, 14, by 17, by 20 points, and that's the typical, I think, the expectation that you kind of come in. I remember back when I was at Troy, they went into that Nebraska game, and just looking around, that was what Nebraska fans were talking about. That was a season opener. We got to win this game by this many points to feel good about the rest of the season. You should have been worried about winning the game in the first place. Right. And that's where you don't want to get caught if you're Mississippi State, but that's where you want to be if you're Southern Miss. So that's a good spot to be. I think the thing that you're looking for the most, though, on that day, like you said, 11 a.m., Charles Huff has talked a lot about the back half of the roster. These guys have all come in very recently. I mean, we're talking like 30 players that just arrived. Oh. He doesn't know that half is ready to play football right now. And you get into a game like this where you're hitting an SEC football team and it's 11 a.m. and then it's 1 p.m. The cramps are going to add up. Yeah. Are you comfortable sending in, defensive tackle number 3? Are you comfortable with your backup left guard? That's going to be a big question as far as the durability of this team. And it's going to be tested very early.
All right. So you mentioned, and we're talking with Scott Watkins, Locked On Sunbelt. Your teams every day covers the Southern Miss Golden Eagles for the Sun Herald. You mentioned the offensive line and the depth a little bit lacking. What are some of the strengths? You mentioned running back and wide receivers. What are some of the strengths maybe defensively for this team?
Defensively, I mean, honestly, there are bright spots at every level. Mm-hmm. They've got a good DT that they brought back in Bradarius Lewis. They're really high on Jabari Ishmael, who was he was a sidekick for Mike Green and Marshall last year on the other side of that defensive line. And he's got a lot of potential. Former 4-star, former Miami Hurricane. And then, of course, in the secondary, Josh Moten. I mean, that's an NFL player right there. That's going to be the first player Southern Miss has had drafted in some time. And then they're very talented at safety. Ian Foster, Jason Seymour is a big fan of him as the nickel in his 4-2-5. So they're really excited about that. And, of course, your 2 linebackers. This is one of those. This is what I'm talking about with depth. Your top 2, I think you can be really excited about. Your Mike is going to be Mike Montgomery. I mean, he's an all-freshman FCS player. And then your Will is going to be Chris Jones, who was far and away the best player on the team last year as a true freshman.
That's crazy.
So you should be very excited about those 2. But who comes after that? You can't play 2 linebackers the whole game. Marshall last year rotated a lot. I mean, they played a lot of defensive linemen. They played a lot of linebackers for only having 2 on the field. So what is Jason Seymour going to be comfortable with heading into the year? But the strengths, that the top of the depth chart, when it rolls out, whenever it does that game week, I don't know what Huff is going to do. What you see on paper is going to be very good. But what you don't see on paper is going to be what decides how far the team goes.
Yeah, those defensive linemen, offensive linemen, we usually don't see rotating in and out. They're usually in for a series, right? The defensive linemen, you can see 8-9 guys rotating in and out every not every play, but certainly every set of down.
Yeah.
Those guys are rotating in. if it, does it go from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 2, or does it go to, 2nd and 14? And then the different guys are coming in. And then those coaches, if the offense is making changes and those defensive linemen are not necessarily hustling off the field, they can take their time because they get to make a change, right? So they're slow jogging off the field, the way they get to take advantage of those rules, right? You see them. They're running, but not really all that fast to make
taking up the time.
Yeah, they're taking their time. All right. So what about some players? Who are some of the wide receivers? Because Southern Miss has had some wide receivers in the past.
They have.
Did Brownlee just make a good catch for the Chiefs in the preseason this past weekend?
I did see something about that.
Yeah.
The thing about wide receivers, they have a lot of them, but I don't know that they have a wide receiver one. I think one will emerge, but at this moment, it doesn't seem like that. In the spring game, I thought the chemistry between Braylon Braxton and Braylon Brown was really, really good, but that was like 6 plays, so we don't really know for sure. But they've got a ton of talent. I mean, Micah Davis is somebody who's multi-talented. I mean, he's played running back, played wide receiver. Grant Page, he's followed Blake Anderson. He's a good one. Who else? Tyshawn Chapman and Chuck Montgomery, both of those guys. I think those are both Marshall guys. It's hard to remember. Carl Chester is a Marshall guy. Elijah Metcalf is. And Davis Dalton is back. I think he's the one. He's the one guy back. Xavier Hales as well. He's back. Then a tight end, Kyron Heath, is extremely talented. He didn't get involved very much last year. That was not his fault. But when he was involved, it seemed like he made the majority of their big plays. I mean, obviously not, but it just seemed like it when he touched the ball, 20, 30 yards happened. So they have to get him involved as well. There's a lot of options. Huff said that in a perfect world, you don't get Mississippi State week 1 because you definitely, with this kind of team, want to figure out what you have and who's best in what spot. And you're not going to know that until you play a live game.
Talking to Scott Watkins from the Sun Herald, Lockdown Sunbelt, your teams every day. He is on the Belt Beat heading into year 5, covering Southern Miss. All right, so has the Sunbelt been good for Southern Miss? Football, it's been pretty good for them. Baseball, been very good for them in baseball. And not too shabby in basketball. Had a good season a few years ago in basketball. Kind of got, I don't want to say screwed, but, ended up with that bad, bye when, didn't play and everybody else was playing and loses early on in the tournament. That's the way that tournament is the way done. But one more time out, we'll come back and wrap up our conversation with the Sun Herald, Scott Watkins, talking about if the move has been good for Southern Miss playing in the Sun Belt. We'll do that right after I tell you about Prize Picks and FanDuel. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football isn't far behind. Whether you got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in the game. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. I've used Prize Picks a few times and love it how simple it is. The flex option play is a total game changer. Even when one of your picks misses, you can still double your money. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, run your game. And FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day. Do they make cards for that? A brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. We'll see who we take a flyer on MVP. Who can win maybe the NFC West? Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bet now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let's wrap up our conversation with the Sun Herald, Scott Watkins. How good has the Sunbelt been to Southern Miss, and what's the one team that Southern Miss is dying to beat? We wrap it up as he is on the Belt Beat for the Sun Herald, covering the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. He is Scott Watkins, and he is Locked On Sunbelt. But how overall, how do you think Southern Miss has enjoyed their time? Have they enjoyed their time in the Sun Belt? Has the Sun Belt been good for Southern Miss?
Well, as far as the program goes, it's rocky. It's been rocky, absolutely. It's hard to say, the Sun Belt has been good for us. Well, you lost nearly every Sun Belt game you played, so it's really hard. Football wise, so it's really hard to say. I could tell you that the fans prefer it over where they were before.
They do,
absolutely. But as far as if it's treated Southern Miss well, it's treated them pretty roughly on the football field so far. But that's more about Southern Miss than it is about the Sun Belt.
Right. They did get a big win a couple of years ago against the Cajuns. That was for sure. Will Hall was on his way out and went into Lafayette nonetheless and beat the Cajuns in Cajun Field. But baseball wise, obviously they've taken advantage. Has that made a major difference baseball wise? Because Southern Miss was a good program before they got into the Sun Belt. Has that lifted the program at all?
Southern Miss, like you said, was a good program before the Sun Belt move. Had a lot of good years, but they were oftentimes kind of sporadic. This run began in the later years of their time in Conference USA. But this is the most consistent they've been. They are a consistent top 20 baseball team year in, year out now.
Yeah.
Whether you can attribute that to the Sun Belt or, Southern Miss, I think, again, that's more Southern Miss than the Sun Belt. But you have gotten a lot of good opportunities out of this league as well to play good teams late in the year. Maybe not as much this past year, but you did get to play Coastal. And you got a big sweep over Troy. That really helped out. But baseball, for the most part, has been very helpful as far as if it's lifted up. I think the coaching consistency year over year and the same strategy year over year, the management of NIL money being more about retainment than acquisition, those are the things that I think have really helped Southern Miss baseball create this run that they're on.
What about rivalry? Because that's been a big thing. Like to bring up the Cajuns again. They didn't have a rival. ULM is not the rival. That's kind of why I was big on La Tech coming in, because that would be a rival. They didn't have one until Southern Miss came in, and Southern Miss is absolutely a rival for the Cajuns. Did Southern Miss have a rival in Conference USA, or now is it better, that they have South Alabama, that they have the Cajuns, that they have Troy, all within driving distance of Hattiesburg?
Yeah, I think Louisiana Tech and their fans can probably correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was probably the former rival right there. So having them come in, that's been good. And then as far as who's been here, hard to say. I think Louisiana is probably the one considered the biggest rival, but the fans really want to beat South Alabama. I don't think there's another team in the conference that the general fan base just wants to see a win over more than South Alabama. Just once, though. Preferably more times, but just once. Just one time very soon. So that in the short term is a very big deal. Troy, I think the Sun Belt's trying to push that. I think that's kind of a secondary, tertiary type thing, but it hasn't materialized that much, mostly because Troy has won that game pretty handedly over the years, over the last few years, including last year when the team had a losing record. So that Southern Miss has to become more competitive if you want to see rivalries in this league start to blossom.
What's the reason behind the fans wanting to beat South Alabama? All I know is that South Alabama went into Hattiesburg, and then the next thing I know that the coach resigned right after that. Will Hall came into South Alabama same opening day as Kane Womack and had a meltdown post-game conference. I mean, got very emotional after the game. It wasn't a pretty game. It was a blowout, and took full responsibility of it. But it was game one. Is there a reason that they don't like South Alabama? They think they're better than South Alabama. They just want to beat South Alabama because they haven't. What is it? What is the deal with South Alabama?
They've played South Alabama 5 times ever, all of them this decade, and they've lost all 5 of them.
Oh,
that's a big one.
They just haven't beaten them.
that is a big one right there. That includes a 55-3 loss. Not even last year, but the year before. That's when that happened. The year before that, they lost by a touchdown. They lost 31-7. They just want to see a win over South Alabama. That 55-3 loss, I was there. And that was probably the most pitiful I've ever seen a football team play. That was rough.
What year was that? Because I would have been.
That was 2 years ago, 23. That's when things really, really fell off the rails. I think that was the moment that you're like, okay, this is not going to work.
Oh, well, was that the 10-win? Was that the 10-win season? No, that would have been not the 10-win season.
That would have been the season after, yeah.
Yeah, it would have been that was one of those odd years for South Alabama.
It was. They played like a 10-win team, but they won, what, 7?
Something like that. Yeah, they did not. They were not ready to play that year against Tulane, and I'm not sure what happened. Personally, my only guess is that Womack was unhappy that he was not considered for that Mississippi State job, and that's why he's where he is at right now. That was basically what I think. And we'll see what happens if somehow Southern Miss pulls off this upset against Mississippi State. One guy named Jeff Levy is going to be on the hot seat before Labor Day. That's all I've been saying that now for 2 months. I may be talking myself out of it, but we shall.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
I will say the Mississippi State quarterback actually played pretty well last year before he got hurt. I know it didn't turn into wins, but statistically he had some pretty good games. They just could not get some victories. So we shall see. He is Scott Watkins. He is from the Sun Herald, always there when we need him. Really appreciate the time. Are we doing spaces this year? Is that done? Are we not doing that anymore?
That's done. I stopped doing it last year.
Ran its course.
It was a lot of fun, but it does take a lot of time that I just don't really have.
Got it.
Away, so
got it. It was
got to retire it.
Especially making fun of Matt anytime I had that opportunity to do that. Yeah. Plus, because he would get excited about anytime I made fun of him. So it was easy to do. Get under the skin. I appreciate your time, Scott. He is Scott Watkins from the Sun Herald, Locked on Sunbelt on the Belt Beat. Tell people where they can find you.
Mostly on Twitter. I don't really use anything else, so find me there, Scott Watkins TU. I'll be tweeting occasionally.
He tweets all the time. All right, and he does a great job. Appreciate your time, Scott. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave.